Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jill, aka G.E. White. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a author, screenwriter, and all-around story fanatic. So if you like stories, whether they are movies, books, television, graphic novels, anime, manga, musicals, video games, let's talk about stories. So today I'm going to be doing my review of my April read of Alice by Heart by Stephen Sater. Sater, not Stater, as I was saying earlier. So yes, I know I had a second book, and I am going to be doing a video review on that. I just figured it would be a good idea to, do them separately because I got a lot to say about this book. So I'm going to put it down just so I can use my hands because I'm a Gemini and we like to talk with our hands. So, anyway, um, well, how do I feel about this book? So before I get right on that, I just want to warn you, there are probably going to be some jump cuts in this video, possibly, I don't really know, because as I said, I have a lot to say about this book, and I might go off on a tangent, and so yeah, that's kind of the beast of editing. Anyway, so was the story good? Yes. Is the writer good? Yes. Was the book good? Kinda, yeah, I guess. Listen, I really wanted to love this book. I really, really did. So why didn't I? I had already gushed about how I loved the musical that I saw the bootleg of, and the CD of the original Broadway cast that I absolutely adored. So why would this not translate well into a book? So I actually ended up, while I was reading this book, I ended up watching this really informative video by Lindsay Ellis, and it's called Why Is Cats? And it's all about why Cats, the movie musical, did not do well. And if you have your time, I'm going to link it at both the end of this video and in the description link down below to that particular video, because she hits on a lot of reasons why certain forms of art do not translate well. And this is, like, unfortunately, as much as I love Alice by Heart, the musical, it doesn't make for a good book, and I'll explain why. So, like, I'm not saying that people won't enjoy the book at all. There are some stuff that is very enjoyable in this book, especially if you have already watched the musical. It gives you a lot more depth on the characters, their backgrounds. There is so much information about the 1940s and how it was like during the Blitz. We get the background of Alice and Alfred. Just a side note, I'm going to try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but, do go forward with a little bit of caution because, as I said, I go off on tangents and I might just let something slip. That's just how it is. Anyway, getting back to Lindsay Ellis and her video and why it basically kind of struck me as to this was the answer why I wasn't enjoying Alice by Heart the same way I'd hoped to. So as I said, there are moments of brilliance in the book itself when it comes to, unfolding this world and, showing us the reality that Alice and Alfred live in, and it gives a lot of depth that you don't get to see in the musical, which is great. However, so first off, I'm going to be candid about my personal preferences. I am not a big fan of purple prose and flowery writing. I can handle it once in a while. I enjoy a clever turn of phrase, something that's very pretty once in a while. But if, like, even as a fantasy reader and writer, if something is, like, more than like a paragraph describing something, my eyes just glaze over. I'll admit that. And so that was why I was having trouble getting through this book, because this is a story that is very dreamlike and it does revolve around a lot of description. And unfortunately, it that did not resonate with me in the way I kind of hoped it would. He does use a lot of these kind of Wonderland isms where certain types of turns of phrase, kind of like like the Jabberwocky, clicker, like Snicker Snack, all this kind of stuff, or say the Vorpal Blade, I should say. All these little kinds of ways of speaking that kind of harken back to Wonderland. Those were nice touches, but at the same time, these descriptions went on a long time. And what I realized about Alice by Heart, and it's kind of a hard truth to swallow, but it is there. The truth is that the story itself, it's kind of flimsy. There's not a lot to it. And I realized this by watching Lindsay Ellis's video, bringing it back to this. So, what Lindsay Ellis's video was about, as I said, it's about why Cats, the movie musical, did not do as well in the theaters, just because of like there was a lot of reasons why it didn't do well. I mean, yes, there's like the whole uncanny valley look of the show, and the fact that once again it was kind of the same idea where you had a very flimsy plot. They actually added plot for the movie because the musical itself doesn't really have a plot. It has what I would call a framing device. And so it works in a musical setting because it is a review show. So what is a review show? A review show, as I said, usually has a framing device, and then it has these little vignettes of little different numbers. And they all kind of come together in this, I guess, overarching story. So as much as I hate to admit it, Alice by Heart is a review show in many respects. So they have the framing device slash story. There's a little bit more story to Alice by Heart than there is in Cats, because we still follow Alice throughout the entire storyline, while a review show usually has it's one character doing their number, and then they go on, and then somebody else does like their number when they're introduced. So think of shows like, well, Cats is one of them if you've ever seen it. The other ones that come to mind are things like a chorus line and was it the 35th Putnam County Spelling Bee? I can never remember what it is, but yeah, the Spelling Bee musical. I can't remember. Sue me. Anyway, so Alice by Heart kind of runs on a similar idea. So while we have this overarching story of her kind of mentally traveling through the world of Wonderland in order to kind of comfort herself and Alfred and the other young people that are down in the tube station with her during the 1940s London Blitz, it's very kind of chronological. Like you start with, so you have like the down the hole number is, introducing that they are now in this Wonderland. And you get the first number, which is Still. And Still is her and Alfred, who is her white rabbit, introducing the whole concept of what they are doing, which is she is chasing him. She is, she's infatuated with him. She's grown up with him. She loves him and she wants him to stay with her. But because of his diagnosis of tuberculosis, there is a huge question mark about whether or not he will survive, all this kind of stuff. So he's kind of, he's aware of his sickness and, he's kind of losing time. He's running out of time, quite literally. So he kind of has these misgivings of going through the story because he doesn't know how much time he has left. Still, he ends up going with her on this journey. So from there, you get like a number from the caterpillar, and then a number from the Cheshire Cat, and then you get a number from the Duchess, and the Mock Turtle, and so on, Jabberwocky, Queen of Hearts, so on and so forth. And it's very much a review show, but we have Alice as this through line. And with that being said, when we try to put this into a book, it doesn't really work. And I'll tell you why it doesn't really work, because as I said, like the language is very, very descriptive and very flowery, because what made Alice by Heart work as a musical is that it was visual and that it was emotive. So what I mean by that is the music in it, it really, it the music in Alice by Heart is amazing. Duncan Sheik is an amazing composer. Just, he speaks to me in melancholy cello, and I freaking love it. And it's really great because there's also different types of musical genres throughout Alice by Heart, and it kind of reflects the different characters, and it works as a review show in that respect. Once again, this overarching story slash framing device. I don't really want to use the word term framing device for Alice by Heart because it does feel like more of an overarching story, as it is mostly Alice's, journey through grief and processing all these horrible things that have been happening to her. And as I said, I will suggest that people who have watched the play or listened to the soundtrack and are interested in it, yeah, do read the book. It's not a long book, but I found it kind of slow going, but it will give you this background information about both Alice and Alfred. And it really makes you feel more for them in that respect. So I do appreciate that. But it is kind of hard to tell what's going on in the sense of what's real, what's fantasy. It took me a while, especially near the end. I'm like, okay, is she like losing her mind? Is she awake during this? And it does turn out, yeah, most of like the end, this is the one spoiler part. Three, two, one, spoiler. It seems like it's a dream. And that like all of her interactions at like near the end of it are mostly her dealing with her grief and all this other kind of stuff. Another spoiler, three, two, one. When Alfred dies, she doesn't really get to say goodbye in the traditional sense. She has a dream, she sees him in her dream as the White Rabbit. They kind of have a goodbye of sorts. As I said, it's very weird, kind of um almost like an afterlife kind of feel to it, but they're in Wonderland, and Wonderland is not quite the way that they remember it, all this kind of stuff. But of course, she doesn't get this goodbye in real life. It's she wakes up and he's been taken to this ward, and we get word that he has passed. So, end of spoiler. I'm gonna try and see if I can like make some little note about it with the spoiler tag and such. Anyway, um, so with that being said, it's hard to say whether or not like this could work as a book. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people out there who do really enjoy it, and as I said, there are some moments of absolute uh like real brilliance there, especially because it gets very meta. I'm gonna do a quick jump cut here while I go pick up the book and find the quote that I was looking for. So just hold on one second. So it took me a little bit, but I finally found the passage that I was thinking of. It was not where I remembered it being, so that's why it took me longer. Anyway, so this part takes place during the trial in Wonderland with the Red Queen, and this is very meta, I find, and it's such a great little snippet about the ideas of how books change us as people and why they're so important. So I did really appreciate this part, so I thought I would just read from this section. So this is Alice, and she is kind of thinking about all the time that she could be spending with Alfred and this idea of time running out. So, and yet, her look said, did they have to end like this? Couldn't they just turn back a page? Couldn't they flip boldly back through and do all those celebrated bits she had so recklessly skipped? They could spend all afternoon, they could, just doing them. And maybe then each moment would offer not only itself, but also the means of their keeping it. Or would it not? Could they not? Stories had laws, after all, and perhaps every book, even their book, held something inviolable. How could she transgress against her own myth and expect any good to come from it? And beyond that, Alice knew every good book requires so much, demands so much, first from its writer, who is never up to the task of fulfilling their book's egotistical demands, then from the reader, who's left to contend with something in herself that she can never understand, some discontent too exquisite to tell. So I don't know. I when I read that, it really kind of struck me, and it was one of the few moments where I was just like, "Ooh, oh, okay, yeah." Um, as I said, I did really enjoy when they were talking about the build up to the story, telling us where Alice and Alfred were, how they ended up in the tube station in the first place, where their parents were, things like that. So yeah, I would definitely suggest people who have watched the musical to read it for that, just kind of filling in the blanks, because as much as I did love the musical, there was a lot of kind of question marks. And just once again, getting back to Lindsay Ellis and Marshall McLuhan with the quote, "The medium is the message." I feel that this is kind of one of those cases. And the whole thing with Alice by Heart the musical, it is a very visual show. And while, they don't always have the grandest of costumes, but there's a lot of symbolism in how they create all these creatures from Wonderland, whether it be the Jabberwocky being made out of like rifles and other things of war, the mock turtles with their helmets, which are to represent their shells, things like that. And then to have the music, which is so emotive, to carry through this idea of longing, of, loss of innocence and grief, that is what is quite, stirring about this story in general. And as I said, unfortunately, it doesn't really translate well into a book. It's If you need something where, you need this stirring of emotions, I think music is probably the best medium to do that in. And if you have something that is fantastical and beautiful and breathtaking, a visual medium is the best way to take that. So that being said, this is something I could see being made into maybe a film, though I would be more inclined to make it an animated film. I think you could have a lot more whimsy with it. It would be quite good overall. As I said, like I'm not trying to, downplay the works of this author or anything like that. He's obviously a very talented writer, in the sense that, like, I love the original, both Alice by Heart as well as his version of Spring Awakening. uh he does know how to do an adaptation of classic literature and stuff like that, so I will definitely give him that. Unfortunately, as I said, when it comes to it being a novel, for me personally, as I said, this is just my personal opinion, it didn't really work for me. So, once again, I will urge you guys to watch Why Is Cats to fully understand what I'm talking about, with it saying that this was a review musical that they tried to make into a book. And because of that, there was a bit of flimsiness when it came to the storyline and even just understanding what was going on. So, as much as I wanted to love this book, it's good. It's like a 3 out of 5 stars, I would say, if I'm going to give it a rating. But like, if I hadn't already seen the musical, I probably would have not finished the book, I'll be honest, because the writing style was not to my personal taste. But that's just me. Anyway, let me guys know what you thought about the book or the musical or anything else. If you have any, like, if you think I'm dead wrong, let me know why. Just all that kind of stuff, because I'd love to have a conversation about this. And I'll see you guys very soon with another video on Black Wings Beating, which is the second book that I read for the month of April. I know it's already May. I'm a little bit behind. And then I also do a May to be read list, which is gonna probably bleed into June. We'll see. Anyway, so hope you guys are doing well during this time, staying safe, staying inside if you can, or at least, social distancing, doing all that stuff to do our part flattening the curve. And I will talk to you all later. Okay, bye.